All right, wife. It's time for Book 3. Book 3 is titled The Dragon Reborn. And despite the name, The Dragon Reborn is in like 1% of the book. This is the book that made me really like Matt as a character. Because so far all we've really had him do is suffer because of a poor choice at Shadar Logoth. So we really get to see him come into his own a little bit now, and that makes me happy. There's a lot of Perrin in it as well, and a lot of focus on the girls doing stuff too, now that they're on their way back to the White Tower. And I really enjoy this one too, and the ending of this book is like top tier. So I'm really looking forward to getting to that part. So, without further ado, we'll start with the prologue. The prologue is titled Fortress of the Light. We go to the perspective of Pedron Nial, who is the Lord Commander of the Children of the Light, the White Cloaks. And Child Biar is there, and he's presented the commander with a drawing. It's this youth with red hair, someone claiming to be the Dragon Reborn. And Biar tells Lord Captain Commander, there's fighting going on all across the Almouth Plain and Toman Head, and 1,000 children of the light were killed by Aes Sedai. Because remember, they think the Shan-Chan use Aes Sedai, not that it was the Shan-Chan themselves, They don't see them as two separate entities. Child Biar gets dismissed from Pedron Nial, and Nial says, Child Biar says before he goes, I know that the Shan-Chan are all dark friends, because Bornhald told me so, but the real culprit of all this trouble in the world is Perrin of the Two Rivers. Because if you remember, Child Biar has a burning hatred for Perrin, because Perrin killed 2 children of the light when he was held prisoner there. And Child Biar is very, you might even think of him as a zealot, very religious, very much believes that what he's doing is right, and those that oppose him or do anything he is not for, those people are evil. Another man, Jaishim Caridin, you can just remember Caridin, enters the room and tells Lord Commander Nial that, the Shan-Chan are the ones that seized Falm, and they are dark friends. They're here to support the false dragon. They have the Aes Sedai helping them, and Nial instead orders Caridin to make sure that this new false dragon does not die, and to kill any Aes Sedai who oppose him, rather than those that support. And there's like, oh my god, this is almost blasphemous. But he does what he's told, because Commander Nial is in charge, right? And then as those people leave, another man emerges from a secret passage in the wall of the room they were in. The man introduces himself as Ordith, and Commander Nial is not surprised to see him, so you get the sense they've met before. And Ordith looks at this drawing of the false dragon, which we know to be Rand, and he tells Nial that drawing is of Rand al'Thor, a dark friend from Two Rivers. With him are 2 friends, Matrim Cawthon and Perrin Ibarra, his 2 friends, almost as evil as he. And Nial wonders, maybe I need to make my way to the Two Rivers. And we've never seen this Ordith fellow before, by the way, that we know of. So, new character. But important to remember. We switch to Caridin's point of view, one of the Children of the Light that was just talking to the commander. And as he was sent off with orders to support Rand al'Thor, basically, he is walking with, not fury on his face, but a grimace, at least. And when he enters his room, a Myrddraal is waiting for him. The Myrddraal tells him, Caradin, you had orders from the great Lord of the Dark to find and kill Rand al'Thor above all else. And then you find out through their conversation that the Myrddraal said he would kill one member of Caradin's family every month until al'Thor is dead. And Caradin is begging the Myrddraal, please, I need more time. I have a cousin in the countryside. You haven't killed her yet. Give me another month. And he's just selling out every family member he knows, begging for his own life. The half-man disappears, acknowledging this. And Caradin orders a servant that comes into the room to give him a pen and paper, for he has orders he must write. But the question in his mind is, which orders does he give? Does he give the Lord Captain Commander's orders to support Rand al'Thor, or the Myrddraal's to kill? Chapter 1 is titled Waiting. Perrin is with a group of Shannaren soldiers in the Mountains of Mist, and he doesn't quite feel right. But he shakes himself out of it because he's supposed to be keeping watch. He thinks about reaching out to the wolves in the region to see if anything's wrong, but then he's like, no, I'm not doing that. They see a raven, and before it can get away, Perrin takes out his Two Rivers longbow and pegs the raven in the distance, taking it down. After all, ravens are agents of the Dark One, and they could report to a Myrddraal. Even if it is just a normal raven, it's better not to take those chances. A rider comes in and with a woman, and this woman introduces herself as someone named Leia, and she's a tinker, one of the traveling people, the pacifists, if you recall. But the tinkers are the ones that sheltered Perrin and Egwene when they were on the run originally in Book 1, if you recall. So very kind people generally, and Perrin asks, how did you find us in the mountains here? And she tells him the exact same answer everyone else has given him over the last few months, that she just knew if she came this way, she'd find someone to take her to the person she wants to talk to. Perrin seems to understand this and takes her back into the camp. He thinks to himself that with the Tinkers following the way of the leaf, the way of nonviolence, he wonders how that belief would hold up against a Trolloc horde. But Leia is still convinced the way of the leaf is the right thing to do. And she notices how uneasy Perrin feels with his axe on his belt, but Perrin refuses to acknowledge that discussion. Eventually they emerge into a camp that is very simple, some fireplaces and some log huts. But in the middle, a banner with a mythical beast called a dragon ripples in the wind. Perrin then welcomes Leia to the camp of the Dragon Reborn. Chapter 2 is titled Sidin. At this point, we understand Leia is here to see Moraine. They offer her rest, but she says, no, I need to talk to Lady Moraine, and she immediately goes right off to talk to her. Min walks up to Perrin after seeing him staring at Leia, and Perrin asks, what do you see about her? And Min says, the only thing I can see is a violent death. Perrin asks if she's sure, and Min starts explaining about her ability again. She sees images around people, but not all the time, and not around everybody. She doesn't always know what they mean, and she can't say when something is going to happen, even if she knows what will happen. But one thing she does know is that they're always true. And Perrin comes to the realization that if the Tinker woman is destined to have a violent death, that could mean the camp is going to be attacked. He thinks again about contacting the wolves, but again denies himself that idea. And then he tells Min, please don't tell me what you see around me. Loyal walks up, and they start talking about, man, it's crazy, all these choices we've made that have led us here. And Loyal is like, I think it's pretty lucky to be around all three of you, Rand, Matt, and Perrin, for so long. I'm even taking notes to write a book about recent events of your life. After all, it's not everyone that gets to write a book about the Dragon Reborn. They see Rand coming out of Moraine's hut and understand that they've clearly been arguing with each other all day. The Shinerans are treating Rand like a king, but not Moraine. Moraine is not treating him like a king. And Rand goes through a rock wall that secludes himself, and Perrin follows him. After all, Rand probably needs someone to talk to after all these arguments with Moraine. And he finds Rand reciting one of the prophecies of the dragon. He starts saying to himself, "Twice and twice shall he be marked, twice to live and twice to die. Once the heron to set his path, twice the heron to name him true. Once the dragon for remembrance lost, twice the dragon for the price he must pay." But Rand tucks his hand under his arms and laughs to himself. But no dragons yet. Not yet. Because as we know, Rand has already been branded. Each of his palms holds the symbol of a heron that was burned onto his palms. Perrin looks at Rand and just thinks to himself, Rand is a man who can channel the one power. He's destined to go mad from the touch and the taint of Saidin, the male half of the one power, and in his madness, certain to destroy everything around him. Rand was something everyone was taught to fear from childhood, only it's hard to stop seeing the boy that Perrin grew up with. And he thinks to himself, how do you just stop being someone's friend? Rand looks over at Perrin and asks if he thinks Mat's alright. And Perrin says, yeah, he has to be in Tar Valon by now to get the healing he needs. Do you, Rand, do you wish you were still a sheep herder? And Rand mutters something about duty, which, as we know, is something Rand takes very seriously. After all, death is lighter than a feather, duty heavier than a mountain. And says there's nobody else that can do what I need to do. Rand tells Perrin about what he's been arguing about with Moraine, that people have declared support for the Dragon Reborn on the Almouth Plain, and others are condemning those that do so, and there is fighting and dying and killing going on in Rand's name, and there's nothing he can do about it here in the mountains. Rand knows that Moraine is right to not interfere with that, because there's nothing he can do, but he's just frustrated. And he talks about Saidin and how he yearns to pull more of it in. Even though the taint feels like oil on his skin, it is so alluring to touch. He feels alive when he has it. Colors are more vivid, sounds and images are sharper. But he has very little control over Saidin when he grabs it. And he can't always grab it even when he sees it. And he thinks to himself, what's going to happen if we reach the last battle and I can't even touch it? Suddenly the ground starts to tremble under their feet, and apparently Rand found the source this time. He unleashes a small earthquake, and then, as we understand at this point, he wasn't trying to create this earthquake, and he manages to grab hold of Saidin again and control it. Saidin fills him, he said, but he needed to direct it somewhere or else it was going to burn him to a crisp. And he looks around at the damage, and Rand says, I didn't mean to do that. Perrin's like, we gotta go back to the camp, but Rand says, I just want to be alone for a while. Chapter 3 is titled, News from the Plain. As Perrin goes back to camp, he sees Moraine and tells her, Rand didn't mean to do this. And she looks very angry about it, but doesn't really say anything. And Perrin sees damage everywhere. Things just broken, right, because of the earthquake. He walks over to a cook fire, and half the stew was spilled by Rand's earthquake. And Min tells him no one's injured beyond a couple bruises. And that means to Perrin, and he thinks with relief, okay, that means Leia is fine still. Moraine comes over to the campfire, and Min asks if Leia is in fact alright, since Leia was with Moraine. Moraine says Leia split her scalp in the quake, but she's been healed. And so they wonder, is that what Min saw? Is everything okay now? A few more people join, and Moraine starts saying about what news Leia brought, and essentially there's a lot of fighting down there in the Almith Plain, including now some Domani, Taraboners, Hunters of the Horn. But what is most unusual is that as many as 5,000 White Cloaks are in the area. Moraine starts to worry about an attack from Myrddraal, since Rand's channeling was probably a beacon to any Dark Friends who were here within 10 miles. And there's like a feeling in the air. And Perrin seems kind of on edge, like something's not quite right. But with nothing else to do, they all go to bed for the night. Chapter 4 is titled Shadows Sleeping. Perrin is asleep, and he finds himself in the common room of an inn. There's a guy sitting at the table, and he asks Perrin if he's ready to give it up. Perrin doesn't understand this, but realizes the man's talking about the axe that Perrin wears at his side. And Perrin tells the man, "I will give this up, but not yet." He offers Perrin a drink, but Perrin refuses and walks out of the inn. But as he's leaving, the man tells him, "Your 3 threads are woven together, you know. If one is cut, all will fall." Perrin goes outside and into another room and sees himself in a mirror, and he's in great armor with an axe at his side. Part of him accepts what this is, this image of himself, but another refuses it. But as he refuses this, he hears a woman's voice. "You are destined for glory." He turns around and looks at this woman, and she is by far the most beautiful woman Perrin has ever seen. Makes every other woman he's ever seen look clumsy by comparison. And this woman tells Perrin, "You need to reach out and grasp your destiny." But Perrin tells her, "All I am is a blacksmith, and that's all I want to be." She offers him a drink, but he refuses. And the woman leaves, but says, "I'll go now, but I will always be in your dreams." He shifts to another dream where some stuff happens, but then it shifts again. And in this third dream, he finds himself in a large open space with these huge columns made of red stone. And in the middle of these columns, floating a little bit above the air, not touching anything, is what appears to be a crystal sword. And Perrin realizes this is important. He doesn't know why, but it is. Kalendor. He doesn't know where he heard that name before, but he knows that's the name of that sword. Kalendor. And he remembers he's had this dream once before. And as he comes to this realization, wolves break into his mind. Perrin wakes up, startled, and the wolves give him one short message. The Twisted Ones come. Chapter 5 is titled Nightmares Walking. Perrin doesn't bother getting dressed. He just grabs his axe and runs outside. Lan is already out there, ready to go. Moraine already using the one power to slay Trollocs that have invaded the camp. Perrin sees Leia stumbling out of Moraine's hut. He tells her, "Go back inside," but she doesn't hear. He tries to get to her, but the path is blocked by multiple Trollocs, and he cuts his way and sees that a Fade has reached Leia. The Fade kills her with his black blade. Perrin, enraged, attacks the Fade while in his mind the wolves say, "We are coming." He kills the Fade with his axe and kneels down next to Leia, but realizes there's no time to mourn yet. The wolves are calling him back to the battle. The wolf inside Perrin takes over now. He loses all sense of the greater battle, of everything around him, focusing only on the next Trolloc he has to kill, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And finally, the Trollocs run, pursued by many wolves in the camp. Perrin wants to join them. He feels the wolves kill the last Myrddraal and howls out loud with them in mourning of the wolves that have died this night. When he lowers his head from his howl, Min is there and asks if he's all right. But that response is interrupted by Lan coming up and telling him he fought well tonight. Perrin regretfully says Leia's dead and it was too late to prevent it. And Min says it wouldn't have made a difference, because she knows her prophecies are always guaranteed. While this is happening, one of the soldiers that joined them on their journey in Book 2, Masama, sees that the wolves joined their fight on the side of the light, and he takes this as a symbol. They must go forth and fight in the name of the Dragon Reborn. But one of the other soldiers, Uno, quickly shuts him up and says, "We're not going anywhere until the Lord Dragon says so. But we should skin these wolves for the for their hides." But Perrin immediately shouts, "No!" Everyone looks at him and he says, "They fought on our side. They deserve to be buried with the human dead." And looking at his yellow eyes in the night, no one dares to argue with him. Perrin asks where Rand is, and Min says he doesn't want to talk to anybody, but Perrin doesn't care. He goes to Rand anyway. When he's there, Rand looks up and just says, "I tried to use Sidon to kill the Trollocs, but I couldn't grasp the source. I couldn't do anything useful. I did nothing in this battle." Perrin tries to comfort Rand, but doesn't have much luck. Moraine walks in and starts healing their minor wounds. Rand is there holding his side. He says that, he wasn't involved in the fighting, but the wound in his side that he took at Falm has burst open again. Moraine tries to heal him, but it seems to absorb the weaves, resulting in nothing. She does as much as she can before she passes out from exhaustion. Lan carries her away, tells him to get some food and sleep, because we have stuff to do the next morning. Chapter 6 is titled The Hunt Begins. Perrin goes to bed, but is later woken up by Lan. Lan tells him Rand is gone. He's disappeared. He immediately goes to Moraine's hut to figure out what's going on. On the way, Masama stops Perrin and asks, "Why did the dragon leave his loyal followers? Why did he leave us?" Perrin doesn't really answer, but he thinks to himself, Masama is starting to get this religious fever about him, and it's kind of disturbing. When he gets to Moraine's tent, she says, "I don't know how Rand left, and the guards didn't see him go, but Rand left this cryptic message talking about his dreams." Moraine then asks Perrin, "What dreams have you had?" And he describes them. Moraine perks up when she talks about the floating crystal sword and the columns of redstone, and she immediately recognizes that area as the Stone of Tyr, and the sword as Kalendor. Moraine starts telling them about Kalendor. Kalendor's other name is the sword that is not a sword, the sword that cannot be touched, and it is crucial in the prophecies of the Dragon Reborn. You see, the Stone of Tyr is a fortress, and prophecy says that the fortress, the Stone of Tyr, will not fall until the day the dragon holds Kalendor. The Terrans, it might be Tyrans, I'm not, Tairen, we'll go Tyrants, actually, it's probably Tyrants. The Tyrans hate the One Power, and so they put Kalendor inside the Stone of Tyr specifically to prevent the dragon from taking it hundreds of years ago. So Rand is going to have to figure out that paradox. How can he grab Kalendor if the Stone of Tyr doesn't fall? But how can the Stone of Tyr fall if he has to grab Kalendor first? Lan comes back into the tent and gives the news that many men in the camp have had at least part of this same dream, and now Moraine is sure. She knows where Rand's heading. He's heading to Tyr. One of the soldiers, Uno, comes in and says that Rand's earthquake created another entrance to the camp through the mountain. Rand probably left that way. No one was guarding it because it didn't exist yesterday. Moraine turns to Min and tells her, "You must carry a message to the Amerlin seat for me." Min refuses, but Moraine insists that she goes. Then Moraine turns to Loyal and Perrin and says, "I'm going to follow Rand. I would like both of you to join me." And Loyal and Perrin agree to do so. Min quietly asks Lan if he has a message for Nynaeve, and he says he doesn't, which surprises Min. Finally, Min approaches Perrin and says, "Well, since we're going separate ways for now, I want to tell you about something I saw. I had a viewing about you. I know you didn't want to hear it, but I need to tell you. I saw above you a caged Aiel man, a tinker holding a sword, which is absurd because tinkers don't touch swords or weapons. And I also saw on your shoulders a falcon and a hawk, both female. I don't know what that means. But the last thing is, if you ever meet someone that you think of as the most beautiful woman you ever saw, then you need to run as fast as your legs can carry you." The only other thing is, I'll actually read you it's like a one paragraph, the letter Rand wrote. And he wrote to them, "What I do because there is no other way. He is hunting me again, and this time one of us has to die, I think. There is no need for those around me to die also. Too many have died for me already. I do not want to die either, and will not if I can manage it. There are lies in dreams, and death, but dreams hold truth, too." And, they all realized he was talking about Baalzamon again. The other thing is, during that earlier conversation they all had, they do talk about the prophecies a little bit more, and Moraine is talking about how, he's going for one thing of the prophecy, that Kalimdor has to be held by the dragon, so the Stone of Tyr will fall, but, people don't understand what even all the prophecy means. What does it mean that he shall slay his people with the sword of peace and destroy them with the leaf? What does it mean that the dragon reborn shall bind the 9 moons to serve him? It's there's another one. What wounds of madness and cutting of hope has he healed? What chains has he broken, and who put into chains? Moraine laments, there's some of these are so obscure, he might have already done it, and we just don't understand what these words mean. So what you get out of this is the prophecies are complicated. Chapter 7 is titled The Way Out of the Mountains. Perrin, Loyal, Lan, and Moraine are journeying on to follow Rand's trail. And basically the point of this section is Perrin keeps getting irritated about Moraine, and she's basically suggesting / ordering him to do minor shit, like get the camp ready. And he finds himself doing so, and he's just annoyed. Anyway, they keep going, and they reach a town, and the chapter ends. Chapter 8 is titled Jara. The group enters the town of Jara after exiting the Mountains of Mist, and it looks like there's been some sort of party or celebration a little bit before they arrived. They go to the inn, and the innkeeper tells them, "Oh yeah, we just had a ton of weddings the previous day. More weddings than most people see in their lifetime." Perrin asks if he's seen someone named Rand, but Moraine shuts him down and just says, "Please take us to our rooms." And he does answer though, and he's like, "Oh yeah, there was a boy like that. He spent half the night here, but then ran off in the middle of the night like the Dark One himself was on his heels. He seemed quite mad, to be honest with you." He then looks over at Moraine and says, "You're Aes Sedai, aren't you?" And Moraine is very nervous, but it's very clear on her face that she is Aes Sedai. After all, when you've been using the power for too long, you get kind of an ageless quality on your face that identifies you. Aes Sedai don't look like normal people. And he asks, can and he asks Perrin, actually, can you get her to help my brother? He's sick. And Perrin agrees, and he's like, I'll ask. He finds Moraine again in her room, and Moraine is like, well, Rand's definitely been through here. You can see the signs of a ta'veren. These weddings are basically all the proof we need. Because what happens when a ta'veren is near is he alters the fabric of the wheel and creates, even if something had the slightest chance of happening, it becomes almost a surety when a ta'veren is near. And so, odd happenings are bound to happen as the wheel tries to balance itself. And so what you get out of this is that, yeah, a ton of people got married yesterday, and it was because Rand was here, indirectly. Perrin mentions, hey, can you heal the innkeeper's sick brother? And the innkeeper takes them to a shed. And there's a man in the shed, locked behind a bars. The innkeeper says, this is my brother, Noam. And Noam looks into Perrin's eyes, and Perrin looks into his. All 4 eyes, bright yellow. It seems that this man, however, has fully turned into the wolf. Moraine looks to see if there's any trace of humanity left in Noam, but can't seem to find it. She admits she cannot help him. Perrin is distraught by this news. Could this happen to him? And he tells the innkeeper, you should let him go. At least free him so he can die like a free wolf, not a caged one. The man does so, and they free Noam. Chapter 9 is titled Wolf Dreams. Perrin goes into Moraine's room later, and Moraine says, I've been expecting you. And he talks about the wolves. Moraine tells him, I've been waiting for you to talk to me about it, but it seemed like you didn't want to, so I haven't brought it up before. The Aes Sedai don't know much about people that can talk to wolves, but she says, I'll tell you what I can. You see, wolves live partly in the world of dreams, and Aes Sedai who have the ability to dream sometimes find wolves in the dreams to be their guides. But this means, since you have wolf in you, you have to be careful both while awake and asleep. Perrin, as it is late, takes this news and eventually does have to go to sleep. And the second he falls asleep, he finds himself in a wolf dream. In the dream, he sees a wolf and he recognizes it. It's Hopper. Hopper was a wolf that ran with the original pack back in Book 1, and Hopper died, saving him from the White Cloaks, and it was Hopper's death that enraged Perrin to the point where he slaughtered 2 of the Children of the Light in his wolf rage. Hopper couldn't possibly be here, though. Hopper is dead, and yet here he is. Hopper warns Perrin of danger and tells him, run. Perrin runs, even though he doesn't know from what or to where. He meets a man in the dream, and the man tells Perrin, be gone. Perrin then sees a beautiful woman dressed in white with black raven hair. The woman seems surprised to see him and tells him to go before he can ruin things he could not begin to imagine, and Perrin runs again. Hopper catches up to Perrin and tells him through his mind, you should leave the dream. Perrin says, I don't know how, I don't know where I am, what is happening right now? And Perrin, standing there looking at Hopper, sees Hopper growl, and Hopper leaps at Perrin's throat. Perrin wakes, his clothes covered in blood. He's determined, I need to stay away from the wolves from now on. We then switch to Rand's perspective. Rand is in a forest somewhere, hiding from a pack of dogs hunting him. He waits for one to get close and then channels the one power and blasts it. The one power comes and he succeeds, of course, this time, but it doesn't always work. But Rand realizes he's learning. Whoever's hunting him will find he's no longer easy meat to eat. He ignores the wound in his side and the wounds that are all around him, ignores the cold, and continues to the east. Chapter 10 is titled Secrets. We switch to Egwene, as that her and her party are approaching Tar Valon, coming back from Toman Head, and they're carrying Mat on a stretcher. Mat's condition is worsening quickly. He has but hours before he may die. He needs to be healed in Tar Valon quickly. In front of them, Nynaeve spots a band of white cloaks. She knows that white cloaks are not friendly to Aes Sedai, and Varen says, "Let me do the talking." The leader of the white cloaks demands to know where they're coming from, and is clearly hostile to them. The white cloaks threaten to take them to questioners for interrogation, and Elaine, irritated, speaks up finally and says, "I am the daughter heir of Andor. You will allow my company to pass, or you will answer to my mother, Queen Morghese." The white cloaks give zero craps, and they say the queen is not as close to Tar Valon as she once was. The leader raises his hand as if to signal an attack, and Egwene, thinking back on her experiences with the Shan-Chan, fearing her capture, has had enough. She opens herself to the one power, lets it flow through her, and fountains of earth explode in front of the White Cloak's horses, frightening them terribly. Elaine and Nynaeve then join her, realizing it's too late, as Varen just looks in astonishment. The leader of the White Cloaks falls off his horse, and the rest of them run. Varen yells at Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine for disobeying her, for taking action when they weren't told. And Egwene tries to apologize, saying, "We've had a long journey from Falm." She's actually trying to apologize to the White Cloak that's left, the leader. She's like, "We had a long journey from Falm. I'm sorry, I got angry." But as soon as he hears the word Falm, the White Cloak yells at them, "My name is Dane Bornhold, and Aes Sedai killed my father at Falm." Varen, angry that Egwene is letting loose such information, expresses how displeased she is. They leave the White Cloak and continue on to Tar Valon, and Varen says that this is where the real danger will begin. She also mentions that what you should do your best to live as if you're Aes Sedai. Once you're an Aes Sedai, you cannot lie, and you cannot use the one power as a weapon. What you just used is using it as a weapon. And Egwene defends herself a little bit, like, "I didn't hurt anybody, I just scared them a little." But Varen is like, "You need to live as if you were an Aes Sedai." And then they continue on. Chapter 11 is titled Tar Valon. They enter the city, and Hurin leaves them. He was helping them get there, but he needs to get back to Shi'enar and report about the events that happened in Falm. And so now it's just the girls with Mat on the stretcher. Varen says to let her do all the talking, because no matter what you say, whatever is waiting for Nynaeve, Elaine, and Egwene in the tower is not going to be pleasant for them, because the tower thinks they're runaways. When they finally reach the tower, Shiriam, the mistress of novices, is waiting. Two men take Mat away quickly, and Shiriam comments on, "Oh, you brought back our little runaways, huh?" And Egwene starts to speak up in her defense, but Varen quickly silences her. Varen tells Shiriam to keep Nynaeve, Elaine, and Egwene locked in their rooms until the Amyrlin sends for them, and says that they are not to speak a word to anybody under any circumstance. Shiriam gets 3 accepted, 1 each, to keep an eye on them, and they are escorted into the tower. Chapter 12 is titled The Amyrlin Seat. We go to the perspective of Siwan Sanshi, the Amyrlin Seat. And Siwan is very impatient to hear from Moraine. She's waiting for news. When Leanne, her keeper, like think of Leanne as her secretary, sort of her exec. Leanne tells her Varen has arrived and is waiting for an audience. And Suan is like, oh, thank goodness, someone's going to give me some news about stuff. And says, bring her in right now, let's go. And Suan kicks Leanne out of the room, which is unusual. The Amerlin doesn't normally take visitors without the keeper present. As soon as Leanne is gone, Varen quickly says, like, I don't even know where to start, but I'll start here. Rand al'Thor has proclaimed himself the Dragon Reborn. Suan is not surprised. She kind of expected this, because as it turns out, both of the other two dragons, quote-unquote, lost that were loose throughout the world, were captured under the exact same circumstances as one another the minute Rand proclaimed himself the Dragon Reborn. Apparently, both of them had their horses rear up at the same moment in separate countries, and then they were able to be captured in the middle of their respective battles. Varen then hands Suan the Horn of Valir and tells her that it is Mat, not Rand, who sounded the horn. Mat is now linked to the horn, which means that until the day Mat dies, nobody else has the ability to blow the horn as anything but a horn. It will only sound for Mat. She also tells the Amerlin that Mat is, in fact, dying in the tower right now because of the dagger he took from Shadar Logoth. She also tells Suan about the Shan-Chan, and then they talk about Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine. And Varen asks, what are you going to do with them? And Suan just makes it clear they are not going to enjoy their punishment. But before I give them punishments, Varen, I want a full written report on everything they've done. Chapter 13 is titled Punishments. The girls are brought to the Keeper's study, and Leanne sends the Accepted that were accompanying them away. And so they go then into the next room, into the Amerlin Seat's chamber. She makes them stand there for multiple minutes before she even looks up, and Nynaeve just can't even hold her tongue anymore and says, we didn't run away, Liandrin made us. And Suan tells them, if we know that you are connected to Liandrin, that could become very dangerous for you. It turns out that Liandrin and 12 other sisters committed murder and left the White Tower. They also went into the bottom of the White Tower and stole a number of Ter Angriel, which are objects of the one power that can accomplish very specific tasks. And they don't even know what most of these items do at this point. The knowledge of a lot of these items were lost in the breaking of the world. They just know that they exist. Nynaeve starts complaining that we're not being treated fairly because we didn't run away, we were taken advantage of, and Suan shuts her up and says that she is sentencing them to a switching by the Mistress of Novices, Shiriam, and you are going to work in the scullery until your hair is gray. A switching basically means a beating, by the way. And Suan also tells them, your punishment has already been announced to everybody, and they are all stunned. Punishments are never announced. Punishments are always between the Mistress of Novices and the one being punished exclusively. So that in itself is also a punishment. The Amerlin also notes, it seems you have all greatly increased your ability to channel since you left. Therefore, despite your punishments, Egwene and Elaine, you will be raised to Accepted since your abilities have grown too much. But don't see it as a reward. Your first days as Accepted will be harder than anything else you've found so far. Suan also says to Elaine, oh, by the way, your mother paid a visit and was very upset that you were not here. I managed to convince her that you needed more time in the tower, but she left a letter with us that is meant for you, Elaine, and she refused to take her Aes Sedai advisor back to Caemlyn. She was so enraged with the Aes Sedai, which means Elida of the Redijah, who was the previous advisor to Queen Morghese, is no longer there. The Amerlin asks Elaine, do you want to go home? And Elaine says, no, I want to be Aes Sedai. And Suan's like, good. Well, I had no intention of letting you go anyway. You need to practice more. She then sends Elaine to the Shiriam for the punishment and says, I want to have a word with Egwene and Nynaeve in private. Chapter 14 is titled The Bite of Thorns. Suan then talks to Egwene and Nynaeve and tells them to keep the murders in the Black Ajah a secret. And she says, you are the only two who I know were taken advantage of by the Black Ajah and were not here in the tower when Liandrin and her cronies murdered and stole. Therefore, I believe you are the only two I can say with certainty that are not Black Ajah. Therefore, I have a mission for you. You can think of it as an additional punishment if you want. You are going to hunt down and find if any Black Ajah have stayed in the tower, because they might not all have left. They say, we're not even going to have time between our studies and the punishments you gave us. Plus, we're not fully trained Aes Sedai. And the Amyrlin just says, you're going to have to find the time. And Egwene's like, why did you send Elaine out? She came with us. And Suan's like, I don't want to endanger relations with Caemlyn anymore. It's a political thing, essentially. They accept the mission. Varen has been tasked to give them any information on the Black Ajah and the Ter Angriel that they can. Suan then pulls out a letter, and as they open it and read it, it's a letter signed by the Amyrlin herself, and says, the bearer of this letter should be obeyed as if she is the Amyrlin. And Suan makes it deadly clear, do not let anyone know you have this. This letter is for emergencies only. They take it, and then finally Egwene brings up Mat, and the Amyrlin just says, I'll send word to you about him when I have some to share. Now go. And they leave. Chapter 15 is titled The Gray Man. The girls go back to Elaine's room and see she hasn't come back from Shiriam's yet, and as they come to that realization, a crossbow bolt streaks past Egwene, nicking her in the ear. Nynaeve drags Egwene down to the floor. Both of them embrace Saidar, let it flow over them, looking around for the assassin. They can't see anybody, but after a moment, Nynaeve spots a man and ties him with air, a trick she learned when the Amyrlin used it on Nynaeve herself. When they reach the man, they find he's already been killed with a dagger, and the crossbow is missing. It is at that exact moment Shiriam approaches, demanding to know what happened. Nynaeve tells her, we found this man like this, lying, because they can't reveal what their mission is to anybody that doesn't already know. Shiriam checks the man to see if he's dead, and is stunned, and says, this is a gray man. Shiriam quickly explains, gray men are men who give their souls to the shadow to become the Dark One's assassins. They have some sort of quality about them that makes them blend into surroundings, making them almost impossible to spot or detect until it's too late. Because both the girls are in so much trouble already, Shiriam says, you both need to leave, so no one thinks that you are a part of this. Go to your rooms. Egwene suddenly remembers the crossbow bolt and makes an excuse to go get it before Shiriam sees it. She goes over there, but the bolt is gone already. There's only one other possibility that can go through her mind. Another gray man took the crossbow bolt. Egwene and Nynaeve leave the site of that murder, and Nynaeve wonders out loud to Egwene, Shiriam never wondered about who stabbed the gray man. Chapter 16 is titled Hunters 3. They go back to Nynaeve's room and find Elaine is actually waiting there for her, and she's in the middle of a very angry conversation with her brothers Galad and Gawain. Egwene looks over at Galad and has some, shall we say, inappropriate thoughts when Galad says hello to her. And he asks them, where have you been these last few months? Why didn't you tell me? And Elaine just says, that's none of your business. And Galad is like, it is my business. Your safety is literally my job. I was only barely able to talk Mother, Queen Morghese, about from taking us back to Andor ourselves. Nynaeve says, all right, both of you, out of my room. And they're like, no, we need to have this discussion. Nynaeve's like, I'm going to send a note to the Master of Arms telling him that both of you entered the accepted quarters without permission. And then you will be in big trouble. And it works on them. They leave. And then after they leave, Nynaeve's like, oh, thank goodness they don't know that you don't need permission to enter the accepted quarters. Elaine looks over at Egwene and says, did Galad catch your tongue? And Egwene blushes and says, I just didn't have anything to say. And Elaine's like, you should look at Gawain instead. He likes you. Yeah. Elaine asks, what did the Amyrlins say? And Egwene's like, oh, you know. But Nynaeve's like, oh, she wants us to hunt the Black Ajah. And Egwene's like, yeah, right. And so they agree, and they basically bring Elaine in despite Amyrlin Seat's orders. And they agree, the three of them together will seek out the Black Ajah. And then they start talking about Mat. It seemed like they weren't really focusing on Mat. And Nynaeve is very worried they're going to let Mat die. And Nynaeve has a very special ability to heal. She is very good at it from her time as a wisdom. And she says, well, if they're not going to do it, I'm going to try to heal him myself. And it is at that moment an Aes Sedai enters the room. Chapter 17 is titled The Red Sister. Elaida of the Red Ajah, former advisor to Queen Morghese, walks into the room. And Nynaeve is like, well, I should probably go. But she's like, I need to get back to my studies. And Elaida's like, your studies have waited long enough. They can wait a little bit longer. And she asks, did you know the Black Ajah is among us? And they're like, Nynaeve's like, yeah, we've been told that. She then asks them why they ran away. And Egwene starts talking about, oh, it's something with Mat. And then Nynaeve is like, nope, Elaida Sedai, we are not allowed to speak on that on the Amyrlin's orders. And then Elaida changes the subject then to Rand and says, that boy Rand al'Thor must be a ta'veren. I haven't seen him in some time. And Nynaeve's like, us either. And before she can continue questioning them, Shiriam enters the room, and Elaida leaves. She brings the girls with her, or she tells the girls to come with her and says, we're going to try to heal your friend Mat now. Chapter 18 is titled Healing. They go deep underground into the recesses of the White Tower, and there's a room where there's a number of Aes Sedai, including the Amyrlin Seat. The three girls are told to be quiet and not distract anyone while they try to heal Mat. The Aes Sedai all start glowing with the one power and link it together, with Siuan even using a Sa Angriel, an object that increases the ability to channel in the user 100-fold. Incredible power being used. And Egwene realizes exactly how much of the power it's going to take to break this link between the dagger and Mat. This is an absurd amount of power that could destroy so much. Egwene had to fight herself from the urge to open up Saidar and add her own power to this tide. It felt like she was going to be jerked off her feet, and Elaine holds her hand still. Nynaeve steps towards the table and then shakes her head and snaps herself out of it as well. They all feel the same pull. The amount of Saidar in front of them is so strong, so wonderful. Elaine's hands start trembling in that desire. Suddenly, Mat, on a table in the middle of all the Aes Sedai, thrashes about, muttering nonsense, and holding the dagger tight in his hand with his eyes closed, and he starts to arch his back, muscles straining until he shook with the energy, and fought and bucked until the point where only his shoulders and heels dared to touch the table still. Egwene whispers, "They're killing him. The Amerlin is killing him. We have to do something." And Nynaeve says, "If we stop them, he'll die. I couldn't handle half as much of that power." And then she thinks to herself what she just said. She thinks she could channel half of what 10 Aes Sedai did with a full Sa'angreal. And Nynaeve is like, "Light, help me. I want to." And then she says, "We must trust them. He doesn't have any other chance." And suddenly Mat starts shouting out loud, "Muandrin Tiadar Analde Cabradin Raidim," arched his back, bellowing words, "Los Valdar Cubiari, Los Kadrai Alcazadar, Alcaldazar." And Egwene freezes and realizes he's shouting the old tongue, an old language, even if she can't understand more than a few words. Korai an Kalzadar, Al Kaldazar, for the honor of the Red Eagle, for the Red Eagle is the translation. Ancient battle cries of Manatharin, the nation that turned into eventually the Two Rivers as part of Andor, a nation that vanished during the Trolloc Wars. The dagger itself, with its ruby in the hilt, rose above his straining body, and the ruby glittering, sending off crimson sparks as if it was trying to fight off the healing. And Mat's eyes open, and he glares at the women around him, screaming, "Mia Ayendi Aes Sedai," as well as more things that are really hard to pronounce. I think I did a pretty good job so far, though, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't read ahead. And he screams loudly, a roar of rage going on, until Egwene wonders how he even has breath left in his lungs. One of the Aes Sedai hurries over to a dark metal box sitting under the table, holding it as if it's very heavy. She sets it beside Mat, opening the lid. She grabs a pair of tongs, grasping the floating dagger as carefully as if it were a poisonous snake. Mat screams, grow frantic. The ruby shines furiously, flashing blood red, and the Aes Sedai thrust the dagger into the box and snapped the lid down with a huge sigh, saying, "A filthy thing." As soon as the dagger was hidden by the box, Mat's shriek stopped, and he collapsed as if his muscles and bone turned to water, and the glow of the Aes Sedai around the table winked out. Mat appears still to be very gaunt, very skinny and ill, and Nynaeve immediately asks if he's healed. The Amerlin says yes, but only time will tell if he'll live now, or what the effects of that dagger were going to be in the long term. Elaine then asks, what was Mat shouting? And the Amerlin says, in the old tongue, he was ordering around soldiers as if he were in a battle, and demanding that the Aes Sedai let him go. And then Suan says, "Right, you've spent long enough here. We did this as a courtesy for you. Off to the kitchens. You all have chores to do." Chapter 19 is titled Awakening. Mat wakes up in a nice bed in a pretty fancy room, and he starts thinking about some of the events that took place after he left the Two Rivers in Book 1. He also remembers how he was a commander of the Heart Guard in Manatharin, and then shakes his head. Those aren't my memories. He tries to get up from the bed, but he's very weak. He can barely stand. But he manages to do so and looks for clothes and sees a mirror, and he looks very ill. But on the table, there's a plate with food, but it's a lot of food. That food looks like enough for 4 fully grown men. He looks out a window to figure out where he is, but it's too dark. However, from the height, he realizes he must be in Tar Valon. He must have been healed. But he doesn't plan to stay here long. As he thinks this, he realizes he's picking his teeth. He's cleared the entire table of food. And then he has another thought. Oh my god, I blew the horn of Valir. That means the Aes Sedai want me here. He starts whistling a tune for himself as he makes plans to leave Tar Valon when someone enters the room. Chapter 20 is titled Visitations. A very beautiful woman steps into Mat's room, probably the most beautiful woman Mat's ever seen, And he asks, "Are you an Aes Sedai?" And she says, "No, but you may call me Celine." You can expect to be hungry like that. It takes a lot of energy to be healed from what you went through. And then she says, "The Aes Sedai plan to use you, you know. But you're destined for glory if you're wise enough not to trust the Aes Sedai." Matt thinks she's pretty sus and asks, "Are you a dark friend?" Celine seems pretty amused by this and just says, "There's only one man I could stand beside but not follow." But Celine admits, just like the Aes Sedai, she wants to use Matt for her own means, and the dagger made Matt a little too suspicious for her to try denying it. But you have to choose who to trust. The Aes Sedai, who won't even admit that you're a part of their plans, or me, who will use you, admits it, but can offer you glory and power if you allow it. And she says, "As a show of trust, I will tell you something the Aes Sedai have kept from you. Tam al'Thor and Abel Cawthon, Rand al'Thor's father and your father, have been to Tar Valon looking for you both." "I don't think the Aes Sedai told you that, huh?" Matt is a little skeptical, but when he shows this skepticism a little bit of Celine's offer of power and wealth, she starts to get annoyed, and then he hears something in the corridor. She quickly turns and says, "I'm leaving now, but I will return. Consider your choices." Moments after Celine leaves, the Amyrlin and the Keeper, Leanne, step into the room. They are like, "How are you doing, Matt?" And Matt's like, "I'm ready to leave." And the Keeper's like, "You can barely stand. You're going to need this amount of food for days yet." And Matt replies, "I'm not hungry at all. I really need to go," as his stomach growls again. They say that they can't be sure if they've actually removed all the evil from Shadar Logoth from him. Besides, we've let the guards know what you look like. No guard is going to let you leave Tar Valon. Matt then kind of is like, "Damn. All right, well, I might as well see if this Celine lady was on the up and up." So he asks, he says to them, "You know, my parents probably think I'm dead." And the Amyrlin just says, "I'll make sure a letter reaches them." But she doesn't say anything more. And Matt then says, "I wouldn't put it past my father to come looking for me." And then the Amyrlin says, "Oh, he and Tam al'Thor have been here, actually." And now Matt's pretty suspicious, and he's like, "What about Rand?" And the Amyrlin's like, "Leanne, can you go get Matt more food?" And then as she leaves, the Amyrlin tells him, "Some topics are too dangerous to talk about even here in the tower. Rand is one, the Horn of Valir is another. You're tied to the horn for as long as you live. You're the only person alive who can use it to summon the heroes of the horn. But if they kill you, the Dark will be able to use it as well. What this means is that we need to make sure that you are there at Tarman Gaiden, the last battle, to blow the horn for Rand." And then she leaves. And Matt relinquishes to himself and thinks, "Well, I guess I'm stuck in Tar Valon for the time being, but I'm going to leave the second I can."